We're getting news of a different country wanting to move away from the dollar, and often, what are they moving towards? Some type of currency backed by real assets, including gold and silver. Saudi Arabia wants to join the BRICS Alliance. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. This is major earthquake level news coming out from Saudi Arabia. If this were to happen, it would disrupt the dollar hegemony that the United States has enjoyed for the last number of decades. It would be massive to the financial system, the financial order of the world. It seems like every day we're getting news of a different country wanting to move away from the dollar, and often, what are they moving towards? Some type of currency backed by real assets, including gold and silver. Let's dig into this Saudi Arabia news and talk about what it could mean for the United States, for the US dollar, and for the precious metals. So, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa met with Crown Prince MBS from Saudi Arabia. And what did the South African president have to say after the meeting? He alluded to the fact that Saudi Arabia expressed their wishes to join BRICS, or at least is seriously considering it. This is earth-shattering news because for the last number of decades, the United States has worked off a system called the petrodollar. We're going to have a little history lesson right now, but it's easy to understand and it's critical to understand if you want to have any level of knowledge regarding what backs the U.S. dollar. In 1971, President Richard Nixon threw the United States off the gold standard temporarily, supposedly, and by the mid-70s had developed a new system commonly referred to as the petrodollar. What that meant was they went over to Saudi Arabia, basically told them, if you want us to protect you, we want you to only sell oil in U.S. dollars. Oil is the biggest, most highly traded commodity in the world. It is the lifeblood of the world economic engine. So essentially, when Saudi Arabia and the rest of OPEC agreed to only sell oil in dollars, it backed the U.S. dollar with oil. And by the way, we never went back to the gold standard. How's that worked out now 50 years later? Thank you, yes you, one and only you. It's me and you right now here in the basement from wherever in the world you're joining me. And I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm not asking even for any petrodollars from you. But if you do get some enjoyment, some value from my content, you're always welcome to come back. You can subscribe right here. Turn on the little bell ding-a-ling so you get notified every time I put out a new video. Don't forget, leave a comment in the comment section below. I don't expect you to agree with me. I just want to get your point of view. That's how we can learn from each other. Now let's get back to the video. So what do you think would give us an indication that Saudi Arabia is serious about moving away from the petrodollar, which would be devastating for the United States dollar and the United States economy? We're going to talk about that a little later, but two big things have happened just in the last few weeks. Number one, our president, Joseph Biden, went all the way to Saudi Arabia to get on his knees and beg them to continue to pump more oil, especially because the midterm elections are coming up. And Saudi Arabia basically rejected him, slapped him in the face, and even worse, announced a production cut of 2 million barrels of oil per day. The White House is furious, right? And they're talking about retributions against Saudi Arabia. The second thing that happened was this announcement by South African President Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa when he said that now Saudi Arabia is thinking about joining BRICS. Well, guess what? BRICS is developing their own reserve currency so they can trade amongst themselves, a currency which coincidentally will likely be at least partially backed by gold and silver. Those actions, those two actions by Saudi Arabia. You know, Saudi Arabia told the South African president it was okay for you to announce this. Those two actions, the rejection of Biden and the announcement of the supposed desire to join BRICS, have been major slaps in the face to the United States and a major threat to the US dollar and the petrodollar. And why would this be such a big deal to the people in the United States and to the U.S. dollar? Because the petrodollar has allowed the U.S. dollar to become dominant in world trade, 60, 70%. Okay? It's allowed the United States Federal Reserve and Jerome Powell to print money at will. It's allowed the United States to keep interest rates low. Right? Because all that money that we were giving to Saudi Arabia for oil, that was all coming back and buying U.S. treasuries. It is going to cause potentially massive inflation in the United States. And we know that Saudi Arabia and the Eastern countries are already selling their treasuries. There seems to be a growing coup on the petrodollar and the dollar as the world dominant currency. Now, look, these things aren't going to happen overnight, right? Maybe they will. Sometimes they happen very slowly and then suddenly. But nonetheless, it's a scary time for the U.S. dollar. And can you blame the BRICS countries for wanting to trade amongst themselves with a currency based on their own currencies? If you think about it, the BRICS countries, they make up 40% of the world population and account for over 25% of the world economy. And what do they have? They all have natural resources. They all have real products, and that's what they want to base their trading currency upon. You know, you've got countries like Brazil and India that export huge amounts of food. You've got countries like China that produce the most gold in the world and the most manufactured finished goods. You've got Russia with all their oil and gas. They want to base their trade upon a currency that's based on those real assets. And that definitely, from what we're told, includes precious metals, gold and silver. Not to mention that Vladimir Putin has already stated he's actually going to start his own metals exchange, his own central trading hub to develop their own spot price for the precious metals, silver, gold, platinum, palladium. I wonder why he wants to do that. Well, he states basically because he believes the price is manipulated in the Western markets. And we know there's no proof of that, right? Manipulation in the precious metals markets? I'm sure that almost $1 billion fine paid by Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan Chase, I'm sure that was a big mistake. They must have been mistaken, fining them almost $1 billion for manipulating the price of metals, or the fact that we recently had several JP Morgan traders convicted of spoofing, of price manipulation in the precious metals market. We're waiting sentencing on that. That will be very interesting. I digress. Back to the petrodollar. Remember, right? Remember, Saudi Arabia agreed to sell oil in dollars because we agreed to protect them, to protect that monarchy. Who would they get their protection from in the future? Because now Joe Biden's going to punish them because they've not been behaving the last few weeks. Well, it'd be easy for them to get arms from two big arms exporters, China and Russia, both of which have a growing defense industry. I don't like to be negative, guys. I grew up here in the United States of America, right? 1970, I remember 1776, the 200-year anniversary, the bicentennial. But man, when I look out at the world, I don't know how you see it. Things are changing at like the fastest rate that I've ever seen. And the change appears to be separation, not a coming together. It's going to be interesting how this plays out. I hope that our children and grandchildren living here in the United States have an opportunity to live as peacefully and prosperously as we've been allowed to this point. We'll see how it plays out. One thing for sure, I will be here for you. I appreciate you joining me here in the basement. We like to dive deeper into these subjects, and you're always welcome here. Leave a comment in the comment section below, and until next time, you be well.